Individual securities. So investing in individual stock positions is a third common way to invest your money. Now there are some pluses and minuses of this approach, and I'd like to go through them right now. So some of the benefits are that you can greatly outperform the average stock market. I've had some individual holdings go up 2 to 3 times in any given year. So that's 200% gains in 1 year from certain holdings. Now it's not the whole portfolio, I wish, but some holdings do greatly outperform, so you can really knock it out of the park if you pick the right securities. Now the downside of that is, some of them can really go down. They could be tanking. They could go down 20, 30, 40% even when the market is up. So you kind of get a blended approach of some that are reaching all-time highs and some that are just going bust. And just having the emotional fortitude and the ability to just kind of weather that and those changes and make good decisions, while some things are doing really well and other things are just doing poorly, requires an amount of skill and a lot of effort on your part to kind of keep up with where things are, and if you still believe in the holdings and if you want to just stick with them for the long term, or if you should just go ahead and cut your losses or capture your gains in the short term. But it requires a lot more active management, so you're having to make decisions on when to buy things, when to keep things, or when to again cut your losses and just go ahead and move your money into maybe greener pastures. So some other benefits are transparency. So the transparency means that unlike a mutual fund that buys a lot of different holdings, so they could have 100 or 200 different holdings in a mutual fund, and some of them you may not like, some of them you may not believe in, some of them may go against some of your personal views, but you can't tell the fund not to pick those holdings. They're able to do whatever they want to do. So having individual securities is one of the only ways to guarantee that you're investing in the things that line up with your own personal values. And that's something that I find that some clients really appreciate, is being able to know exactly what they're in and why they're in it and have their money lining up with their values. Another benefit is that you don't have to pay any fees for mutual fund or ETF expenses. So there's no fund expenses built into holding individual securities, which is a good thing. Now, the downside of this is that unlike some funds where you may only have to buy 5 or 10 of them, you may need to buy 20, 30, or maybe even 40 positions of individual holdings just to be fully diversified, because you don't want to have all of your things into just one basket. So buying that many different holdings could be expensive just from a transaction cost perspective. So even though you're not paying fund expenses, you are paying transaction costs, and that could end up being potentially more expensive depending on how big your account is and how many different holdings you're looking to buy. Now, a few more negatives, or just a few more comments here. I don't think it's necessary to have individual holdings. A lot of clients do like it. A lot of people like doing that. But if it's not something you're interested in, if it's not something that you want to spend a lot of time researching and figuring out which securities you actually fully believe in, then it's probably better off not to do that and let some professional fund managers control which individual positions should be represented in the portfolio. So you could buy a fund and they're picking all the individual holdings, so that keeps you from having to get too much into the details in regard to which securities are being purchased on any given day. So if you're not really committed to it, then I recommend that you just don't wade into those waters, because it's time consuming and it can be emotionally draining or stressful, depending on or it can be blissful too if you're doing really well. Just depending on how things are going, it certainly requires a lot of just mental effort on your part to keep up with how the markets are doing, how the individual holdings are doing, how their competitors are doing, and so on and so forth. But over the long run, I don't think it's necessary just to reach your goals. In addition, a lot of people talk about how, in the text I describe, how if you're holding an investment and it goes down, you should just write it out because it'll likely come back. Now, funds a lot of times will do this because they're a basket of things and they're kind of tracking an index or tracking a certain type of asset class, so they're kind of moving in line with the general stuff that they're buying. But individual holdings and individual companies do not just come back. So some, they come into favor and they go out of favor. You know, for every Apple that's kind of taken over the smartphone, you know, for every Apple that comes into play, you got a BlackBerry that's maybe getting hurt. So investing in BlackBerry and having them go down while Apple's kind of, you know, eating their lunch is, there's no guarantee that BlackBerry is going to get things together and come around ever again and compete with Apple, you know, on those terms. So some stocks go out of favor permanently, and some stocks could even go to zero, and that's just something that happens. And if you have a fund or if you have an index, then sure, those things happen inside of an index as well, but you're just shielded from some of those day-to-day things and some of those larger movements, and emotionally it may be easier just to see a slower rise and slower changes in the values of your investments instead of seeing something doing extremely well and then something else doing just terribly. But I don't think it's necessary, but it can be rewarding if that's something you like to do. I certainly enjoy it myself, but that's one of the 3 common ways to invest, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the coming lessons.